It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.
Yo, man. Boom, it's Rusty. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Public Access Podcast, the podcast here on the Quantum Global Broadcasting Network. And I'm your host, Rusty Diamond. And yeah, check out other great shows on the network, such as When the Gloves Come Off, the Thinking Man's Pro Wrestling Podcast. This is it with Lizzie and Saved by the Ben. And the show is brought to you by Stoner Eats Productions, Fred Ben Savage as Fuck, Hardcore Entertainment, Hypnosis is Great, and SockEmUp.org. And yeah, I've been talking to a buddy who lives in Indonesia, and he's been saying I should be getting my show back on Whatnot. Not Whatnot, but Whatnot is an actual, site. I used to sell a bunch of clothes and VHS tapes and records on there, but it got oversaturated with sellers and it was just hard to gather an audience. But I really enjoyed doing those shows when they were going. So maybe one day I'll go back to it, but who knows? Plus, I had a shop then with a bunch of inventory, and now I just have a little bit, even though I have a bunch of records right now. I have like 4 boxes of records that I need to go through and post on eBay or whatever. But that's not what this show's about. It might be kind of about that, but today I'm going to bring on my special guest. But first, you can leave a message. You can give me a call and put your stuff on the show. 503-974-6420. Or if you don't want to, there's always the option. And it's not gonna do it. Why won't it do it? Why won't it play that? I don't know why it won't play it. That sucks. What the fuck? Okay, well, you guys, it says messages. We don't need no sticky messages. There's my shout out to returning guests. So I don't want to say without further ado, I'm bringing my special guest right here, right now, because that's what I say. So right here, right now, we have Prabha Nagarajin. So welcome. How you doing?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm well, thank you, Rusty.
Oh yeah, pleasure to have you here. So I see you have the Golden Gate Bridge there in the background. Was there significance to the Golden Gate Bridge, or was that something that was in the water, or what was your significance with the Golden Gate Bridge?
I'm going to tell you something. It's probably my son who put it on there. I have absolutely no idea how to operate this level of tech.
That's good. That's fair enough then. So, okay. So, okay, well, I guess then my first question is, so with this, so are you doing a lot of your work then with your clients online, or are you doing a lot of stuff in person, or, and if it is online?
I almost only work online now. I pretty much only work online. I mean, I will treat somebody if they come to me locally, or if I have friends and family who are local to me. But generally, I don't really work in person anymore.
And so with that, how has, do you have your son helping you out, setting you up with a lot of what you're doing online then, or are you just
no, actually we use this Zoom account jointly because he's home educated and he has some tutoring online, and he was redoing my Zoom, I think last week. He said, Mom, the clarity is not good, the color's not good, I don't know what the hell you've done to it, it's not working really well. And he went in and he was doing stuff, and I said, what are you doing? I said, I noticed that things are not really clear, but I have no idea what I did to make it not clear, because I did something to the settings. And then he's like, well, whatever, I'm going to fix it for you. And he did. He must have changed the background, because I used to have this kind of a blur background. And I
Oh,
I
okay.
saw that, and I actually I thought, oh, Rusty must really like the bridge, you know. And I said, oh, he must have put it, until you asked me, and I realized it
Huh.
was me that had done it.
No, I didn't put the bridge. San Francisco is an interesting place in the first place. Have you been to San Francisco before? You've been?
Yeah, I have been maybe 14, 15, 16 years ago. I was in San
Okay.
Francisco. I went there on that, not on that bridge, but walked through the bridge. Uh, Very, very interesting memories for me.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some wild stuff there. Walking around the city. Yeah, I've been there a number of times in the last. I went there, I think, when was that? Maybe 2 years ago. I think I went there, and then before that, I think it had been a long time. Or no, I take that back. I went there back in, what is that, 5 or 6 years ago. I had to go to the Chinese consulate down there, and yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, you definitely see some interesting stuff. I mean, I saw a kid that was, I don't know, maybe definitely under 10 years old, um, who I assume was his mother, hand him a crack pipe and smoke crack at, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. Um,
Wow.
yeah, that's a memory. I don't know if I'll be able to shake for a while. Obviously, 6 years later, I haven't, but yeah, it was a lot of the cities on the West Coast have just gotten wild. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I've seen that city just go, and then Seattle and Vancouver, British Columbia, up in Canada, just all of them have just had, I don't know, a big. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to those cities. And they just, yeah, kind of gone. They're beautiful. They're all beautiful cities, and they've all taken kind of a nosedive in some aspects of it, and it's kind of unfortunate, but you know,
Wow.
so
I didn't know that about those places, and I can't imagine the intensity of the suffering uh, that the people there must be experiencing to go down this kind of paths.
there's it's interesting, especially since like in Oregon, every drug is legalized now, and so you have people again, yeah, smoking crack freely, and a lot of people are on fentanyl and meth and stuff of that nature. So it's interesting. But then there's people that are the way that they're like nobody's really helping the situation. It seems more people are wanting to take video of it, of rather than, doing something to help someone. It seems like to put it on, for some sort of internet clout of
Yeah.
um whatever. And I mean that's kind of a thing we're seeing a lot more now too. As far as, something happens, and rather than go to try for help, the first natural instinct is to pull out the phone and get
Yeah.
footage of it.
I would say, rather than that being a natural instinct, that's become the unnatural redirection of our instincts.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of wild. I mean, I don't I mean, and it didn't take very long to get there. I mean, it took less than 20 years to get there for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the span of time, that's not a very big chunk of time there, 20 years. And I don't even know if 20
Yeah.
years is long enough, but
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I was just talking on my Facebook page yesterday about addiction and its somatic causes. And in my opinion, I mean, legalization of drugs and all these are secondary factors, but the primary factor in addiction is trauma. It doesn't take very long for trauma to be in our system. It only takes, you know, it just takes a couple of years, a few incidents, even a few months. It's not a time factor, even, I should say. It's just those moments of intense pain and not being supported when we have that kind of suffering, and that's it. And that can just, you know, completely railroad our entire lives. And it's not surprising in 20 years. I don't know what went on in those cities, but something must have gone on that made these people feel that they didn't have support and they didn't have anybody.
Yeah, and I mean, with trauma, I've dug into this quite a bit, and with trauma, it stores in your RNA. And what I thought was it would go down and be passed down 2 to 3 generations. And so, which I thought was a lot, but find out I was way off, and it's around 25 to 30 generations down that this sticks through you. And you, I mean, don't even know why you have this stuff inside you, when I mean, a lot of trauma could be healed in under 2 hours. Um, you know, each separate thing, how many times you got to do it is dependent on each person and varies from person to person. But I mean, a lot of it is just can be done, and you can 25 generations of people. That's, you know, conservatively, you know, 400 or 500 years of your lineage. And it's almost a selfish aspect to not work on yourself to work through these traumas. And a lot of people now are wearing it as a badge of honor, and you get this serotonin boost of people giving you sympathy, um, as opposed to, and then expecting everybody else not bring it up, or, you know, trigger you, or whatever the term may be, and always have to be living on edge. And when you're living on edge and always waiting for this, you're in that uh you know, fight or flight mode, adrenaline going, and at that point you can't learn anything new. You're making non-thought out decisions, and just, you know, not really able to live your life how you should be living your life. And
Yeah.
it's I don't know, it's seems like it's a lot more accepted to wear your trauma as a badge and not go out to try to better yourself and, you know, be able to work through your trauma. Is that
Can
something you're
I
experiencing?
can I add my 2 cents? Because
Oh, 100%.
what I think is that it takes a minimal capacity before we can start processing our trauma. Like for me, the thing that put me on my path to healing is that when I was a child, even though I had many adverse experiences, I had 2 incidents in my life where I experienced unconditional compassion and kindness. And those 2 events in my life became this kind of a light that led my way, where I started realizing that there might be something good out there. Therefore, I knew that there had to be something good so I could look for it, right? But
Right.
so many people, when they're in the midst of trauma, they have not experienced that something good, or they have not experienced it at a time where they could absorb and assimilate it. Sometimes people just need that ability to, that ability to trust. Like if you are entirely in a place of I cannot trust the world, that is because you have injury, say, in your very heart and your very primal injury. But how can you be open to healing? You just think, oh, that's not possible. My issue is too complex. This is not going to work for me. Or you can't, some people, they're spiraling in such a, in a situation where even if you give them any resource, they can't, they just can't absorb it. So whether society condones, doesn't condone, I think there are both sides to it. I think if people believe that they cannot do better, they basically, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, they cannot do better. But everybody comes to a point in their life when it's like rock bottom and they say, okay, fine, what's my life going to stand for now? And I'm going to dig deep. Usually by the time I have a lot of clients, because I do somatic work, a lot of my clients are on the older end of the spectrum. So there are more people who have tried everything, and then they've come to that place where it's like, okay, this is just, I have
Right.
nothing to lose. They're coming at that stage to me. They've lived a life that's full of illness, full of pain, full of suffering. And I just work with a simple philosophy. When the life force energy within you is blocked, you will have suffering, whether it's emotional suffering, mental suffering, physical suffering, chronic ailments. It doesn't matter what the suffering is, but the whole point is that you will suffer when life force energy is blocked. And somatically, we just work on unblocking the life force energy so that your suffering is reduced. Whatever your symptom is, that's the end result of that symptom is that you're suffering. And the suffering is a call to awaken. So,
And yeah.
yeah. So.
And like you were saying earlier, that when someone is feeling like they, nothing's going to help their situation, it's again that they're living on that adrenaline, and that point you can't really take in that new information, which can obviously change their life. And so, and you said most people that they come to you when they've hit rock bottom. But I mean, that rock bottom is so important for so many people to get there. um because once you get there, you can't, like, it's literal rock bottom. I like using the analogy of pooping your pants, and once you do that, you can't do it anymore. So I mean, it's only one way to go, and that's up. And I think it's important for some people to get there, and they just have that kind of brain. I mean, that's kind of brain I have, and it's tough. It's a tough spot, and I don't know if there's a way to, be able to reach out to people like that, or like myself, beforehand, and have that person really be like, okay, well, hey, maybe I should go talk to someone beforehand before I get to this spot of, well, okay, I tried everything and everything's messed up and it's over. Now I gotta work on it. Do you know if there's a way, or do you have a way for people to maybe get to that place before they get to rock bottom?
I guess the philosophy that I have is the most important factor in trauma is loss of personal agency, loss of the right to choose. And I think if people need to hit rock bottom to find help, that is their absolute right to choose. And I honor their right to choose that. I have a lot of people in my Facebook group, but a lot of them are not ready. A lot of them will just listen, they will just watch, but they're not ready to seek help or to find help or to heal. They will suffer, even if it is for 10 years, 15 years. And it's not just in my group, it's all over. I'm most active on Facebook. I myself was that person. I was chronically depressed from when I was 15 years old. and I did not seek help for it until I was in my 30s. I made big life changes when I was around 35. And it was that moment, and I still remember the moment. It was in 2007, and I prayed that day. I just prayed. Everything on my life looked good on the outside. I had a good job, apparently a good relationship, money, and I just was so miserable on the inside. I got down on my knees and I said, oh, I will do whatever it takes to stop suffering. I will do whatever it takes. And I'll tell you something, whatever it takes was an understatement, because I had to give up every single thing that meant anything to me to become the person I am today. That career had to go, that marriage had to go, that money had to go, everything. I had to lose my attachment to everything. And it's not a journey for the faint-hearted. So we have to be ready.
So what happened? I mean, how'd that turn out? Like, what did you have to do? So you go and you're praying, you're saying you need to change this. And what was that first step? What was that next moment like after you open your eyes, either literally or figuratively?
It was not so clear cut, because I started meditating at that time, and I used to do intense meditations of, say, 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours. I would do that, and I would have some really surreal experiences as a result of that meditation. But what I realized at that time, that moment was a moment of surrender for me, because I had been trying to be in charge and control my life in so many ways before that. And I just had this kind of like, let it all go. Whatever is too hard for you to hold on to, whatever is causing you suffering, let it all go. Just let it go. And I started letting things go. The things that were hardest to let go of, I had to let them go. Obviously, I did it in a titrated fashion, one thing at a time, being more compassionate with myself. But as I went through this process, I started having a lot more of this kind of self-belief, courage in myself, knowing that I would be okay no matter what happened. And this courage that I didn't have before, where I was holding on to external things to give my life meaning and to give me that sense of stability. Instead, that sense of stability needed to now come from within me. There was no choice, like it had to be. And every time I was faced with the question, and I remember even when I was giving up my career and I had been trying to listen to my heart for many years, my heart had been very tightly shut, not saying a single thing. And I just heard that day as I was walking into work, my heart said, you can carry on doing this thing you do and stay where you are, or you have to give it up and we can, you can move forward. Didn't take me a moment's thought. I went in and handed in my papers and said, I need to leave. That was it. And this was not just any job. I was an ex-banker. I was working in large projects. It was a good pay. I was a single mother. None of this was easy. None of this. But sometimes you have to do things that are difficult.
Absolutely. And so you hand in your paper saying, I'm done with this job. And then you said you were in a relationship as well. And so did you go home, and what was the reaction when you said, hey, I just quit my job?
Actually, I ended the relationship a few years before. Okay. So I ended the relationship, and it took me a few years to get out of the relationship. It was a very messy divorce. Navigating that was also very hard for me. I was a people pleaser. I was somebody who was always very submissive and very I would never take on, and I had to take every step of the way. I had to force the situation, and I was most of the time I was doing it trembling, afraid, terrified, but I had to do it. And I was doing it little by little by little, and I finished navigating that. Then I had my son as a single parent, and then I stayed a few years working because I needed some stability as a single parent. And then it was in 2014 that I had my last job, and I gave it up and I walked away. I've been very afraid after that for many years. And I want to tell people who are afraid that it's very normal to be afraid when you're doing new things. But eventually it took me some years to come to this place where I realized that my calling was to do this kind of work. And you know, it started off with just people spontaneously healing around me, and I was like, actually I didn't want to be a healer, I didn't want to be a coach. I said, I grew up in a family where it was all about martyrdom and serving others, and I said, I'm not going down that path, that's not for me. And it was taken out of my hands again, because you know, when you have to walk on these paths, you have to walk with trust. And when I found myself doing this kind of healing that I wasn't even trying to do, I had to take the message on board, or somatically I would have started suffering myself. It would have become a block in my own body.
As far as what? A block in your body for you
Life
not...
energy not to
Okay.
flow.
And so you were saying earlier too that when you were thinking about the relationship ending, you said you're fearful of something. What did you mean by that? What were you afraid of?
Well, I had been used to I was born in India, and I have a very orthodox kind of family. I was afraid of my family rejecting me, my relatives, me bringing shame on my wider family. That was one thing. And my immediate family, my parents and my siblings. I was in my marriage, things had largely been done how my ex-husband wanted, and I had been generally very afraid of challenging him. I don't know whether I can say that it was because of him. It was probably because of me, because I was just far too submissive a person, and I had never spoken up and put any boundaries or said anything. I behaved very much like a doormat. So the moment I wanted things and I asked for things, it became an issue, because I had never wanted or asked for things before. And suddenly it's like, why the hell does she want things, you know? She's not the one who gets things.
That was the kind of relationship that you two had entered into before, that those were the those were the, I guess, boundaries, but those were the expectations of what was going on. And then once you said, hey, this isn't working for me, then it's a completely different relationship at that point. And you know, so I mean, I guess that makes sense. And so then did you have, I mean, had you seen examples of this where, like, within your family, of someone, you know, ending a relationship before, or where you thought
I
that
grew up.
maybe... Yeah.
I grew up in a traditional family in South India. We don't divorce. Like, they just don't divorce. There are no divorces. Okay, no matter how miserable you are going to stay together. Of course, I wasn't exactly the same, because I was living in London at that time. I had been outside of India for, you know, maybe 8 years, something like that. And I had a lot more, I guess I was a lot more westernized in my you know, beliefs and stuff. My own family, I hadn't seen any divorce at all. In all my growing years, I had never seen a single divorce. I had seen people remarry because they were either widowed or something like this, but never actually a divorce. Even if they didn't get along, they just, you know, kept going on.
And so how did your family end up reacting?
At that time, my dad, actually, I went in when I didn't tell them before I was divorcing. I told them when I was already in the courts and I was kind of finishing the procedure, because I was afraid they were going to try to persuade me to stay. So when I told my dad at that time, he said, why didn't you tell me? I would have talked to him and I would have convinced him. But I said to him, would you rather your daughter was dead and married than alive and divorced? And I think he didn't really understand the gravity of things until that happened, because I was clinically depressed at the time I was doing the divorce, and I had to do it even though I was clinically depressed. But I think my father didn't understand the gravity of it until I said it like that. And then he just was quiet. But they did take it very badly, in the sense, like, my parents didn't really go to family functions anymore. They didn't really socialize with relatives anymore. I guess they felt the social shame of it.
Wow. And so then your parents are still living in India, you said?
Yeah, my dad passed away about 2 years ago. My mom is still there, and she's much more resilient to this kind of thing. She's the one who taught me that you have to be your own person, have your own money, have your own mind, those kind of things. So she taught me not to compromise over much, but I think it was a blow for her as well. But she understood a lot more, and she continued to be much more supportive of whatever choices I made even after that.
So when you were growing up, did you see any relationships that ended up looking like the relationship you were in? At that point, did you see any that you were kind of modeling after?
I think I was modeling very much the behaviors of my, primary carers, which was very much like I would always do too much and then be the victim. I didn't have any boundaries, and I just bitched after the fact. I never really took my power and put my boundaries and say, this is what I'm for. I didn't have self-worth. I didn't have, my own like personality, you could say. I was just very reactive. I was just a person who just reacted to things. I didn't have anything that was me or my own. And it took me many, many decades, I guess, to start realizing who I was, what my beliefs were, what I felt, even my own feelings. I didn't know what I felt. I didn't know what I felt ever in my life.
What do you mean? What did you feel then? I mean, if we weren't
I
able
just
to
felt,
identify your emotions, you mean?
no, I just felt what other people told me I was feeling. I just felt what other people were feeling. If
What do you
I couldn't separate me from others, like I was telling I did a live in my group about autoimmune conditions, and in that I was talking about how if somebody needed help, I didn't realize that there was a difference. They needed help, then they would decide if they needed me to help them, and then they would ask me for help, and then I would decide if I would help or not, right? There is this multiple step process. Instead, someone asked for help, I would immediately jump up and help them, as if there wasn't really a choice, as if their very suffering was actually a request for help from me, and that I didn't really have a choice to say no. I didn't really have a choice to consider what else I had to do. I just had to help. And this way I kept leaking my energy everywhere, just doing things, being this person who was constantly sacrificing for others.
And so this is while you were in the, should have been, or, been reaching out to somebody else, and the old, put on, you're in the airplane, you put on the oxygen mask before you put on, the kid's oxygen mask or someone else's oxygen mask, because you can't really give that kind of attention to somebody else if at the same point you're needing it probably as much as they are, if not more. But being able to kind of,
you need self-worth to put your own oxygen mask on. I had no
right.
self-worth whatsoever. Even if somebody offered me oxygen, I would say no, take some extra for yourself while I starve from oxygen. That was me. Like, I was just so beyond. I always say I was a completely hopeless case. I would go to therapy, and I would listen to the therapist talk about their lives. I couldn't even talk to the therapist about what I was feeling, how I was feeling. Like, I was beyond repair.
What did you talk to the therapist about if you didn't talk about what you were feeling?
How good things were. How well, I didn't know how I was feeling, so I couldn't obviously talk about that. I talk about how well things were, how it was okay. I was clinically depressed, and I would go to therapy at that time, and I still remember I didn't have like that. This is the reason I do somatic work, because my throat was so blocked, I couldn't even utter the words that I needed to say I need help. Like, I couldn't even utter those words, and I would just sit there, and I would go like, it's all really good. I just blaming myself. I'm the problem. I don't know why I'm depressed. And nobody could help me because I wasn't even letting them in like 5 millimeters in. I wasn't, I would just
Yeah.
take all the blame on myself, and I would just sit there and, talk about how everybody else was perfect, how everything else was great. It was just me that was wrong. And it was heartbreaking when I think about it, but that's how I was.
So did your therapist call you on your bullshit, or did your therapist kind of talk you along with it and eventually, I mean, or was your therapist the one who kind of assisted you to see what was really going on, or did was it just, I mean, yeah, because I mean, therapists, I mean, there's all different kinds of therapists, just like doctors, just like hypnotists, uh, anything else. I mean, there's always more than one. And, if one isn't working well with you, go find another one. I doubt it's going to hurt their feelings. And if it does, they weren't that good in the first place. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, you can't really tell someone, you can, but I mean, someone might not listen, just especially with so many, like a clinical board, you can't really say, no, you're wrong. It's just sort of a improv yes and thing, and getting all the information, as opposed to kind of trying to find ways to improve, more just gathering data and letting you be able to get stuff off your chest. But the stuff you were getting off your chest was only what you thought, but not really what you were actually feeling and experiencing.
Exactly. So this was CBT at that time, because I was on antidepressants and, I was doing CBT. And I didn't really do anything much more than sit and cry in the sessions. I just sat there and I cried, and everything that was said to me, probably not in the harsh way, but it was just self-reflective. I took it as criticism. So I was not a very good candidate for CBT. I have a very powerful analytical mind, and I was probably a good candidate for self-healing, like somebody who could take some resources and do their own work, especially because I didn't have a relationship of trust with the outside world. A lot of my work had to be me doing it with myself, which is kind of why a lot of the work I do now is actually empowering people to self-heal as well. Because I recognize that when you're, even though we do a lot of work in trying to me supporting them in the group, I always hand them the resources and then they can come to me for help. So I always give them all the tools. I teach them how to do things. And then we have that kind of a community and the Zoom calls where they can come and get support. So I kind of feel like for me, that would have been the right way to go about things, simply because I would have benefited most in that way, let's say.
And so if you're going to your therapist and you're going in there and you're going in there crying every session, was it your idea to start going to therapy, or was it somebody else's?
Actually, I was it was partly my idea. I wanted help. I was on antidepressants and I wanted help, and my ex-husband was facilitating this, so he would take me to the therapy and bring me back and support me with with whatever I needed, basically. So he was supporting me, but I had actually not wanted to come back to England at that time. I had gone to India and I was staying with my sister and I didn't want to come back. I quit my job. This was in between. I couldn't cope and I just needed like my family. But he persuaded me to come back. He said, come back, you will find help, we'll get you what you need. And he did it. He did find me, therapy. He found me help and support. And it was, it was the NHS in the UK. So it was like 12 sessions or something they gave me. I just went there and boo-hooed the whole time. And I came back and it was just how it was.
So was he going into the sessions with you?
No, he was waiting outside.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I mean, with him waiting outside, was that influencing your train of thought at all? Or did you see it as helpful or do you see it as like, is this gonna please him or what was kind of going on there?
I don't really think I knew how to differentiate me from him. I didn't really know where I began and where anybody else began and ended. I just had no awareness. I didn't even know, I just didn't know, Now looking back, I cannot tell you because it was just such a mess.
So was he going to therapy? If you two were kind of one and the same, was that something that was
He was not
even an
clinically
option for him?
depressed. He was not clinically depressed. I was. So I was going to therapy because I was clinically depressed. I would say that actually what really did help me is, I think it was in 2016 or 17, maybe 18, I went to Women's Trust. Women's Trust is a charity for women who experience domestic violence. And I went there and the work that they did, it was a different kind of therapy. It was in groups, it was workshops, it was things like that absolutely changed everything for me. Like it was the last bit that was just unraveling rapidly when I went there. Everything I'd been doing with my meditation, with my own inner work, everything came together when I was with the Women's Trust, when I went with the Women's Trust.
So with your meditation, when you were doing that, you said you're doing it for, do you say 12 hours at a time?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes very intense.
So if you're doing meditation for 12 hours at a time, before you realize that you want to get better, and then after you get better, what were the differences that you were experiencing when you were in 12 hours of meditation before and after? I mean, did you feel like you were getting to the roots of things when you beforehand, or did you feel like that opened up a lot more once you started getting yourself in a better place?
So the main thing that meditation did to me, it built my inner muscle, the invisible muscle that is the me. Who am I? The self, right? It improved my perception of myself, my boundaries. It helped me understand my energetic body. I started feeling things in my body. I started being able to see my energy, manage my energy. Along with that came also being able to see other people's energy and to navigate those things. I became really strong from the inside. I became really able to stay strong and grounded in who I was. It made my neural networks really flexible. So I was able to change my perception very easily. And there was a saying that I read, every time I change my perception, I rewrite my DNA or something like, so I don't remember exactly the words, but that's basically what it is. Because every time I was able to change my perception. When before I was a victim and everybody else was evil, I was able to start seeing my own contribution in that dynamic. And I started being able to see that, oh, maybe this way of being wasn't quite right. And I started seeing my own obligations to myself, my own relationship. So when I was this kind of a blaming person, from being this blaming, negative, resentful person, I started becoming this graceful, grateful, empowered, self-loving person, I guess. So neuroplasticity, I would say, is the number one benefit of meditation.
Yeah. And so who would you say yourself was before, and who, if you were, if you're meditating and you're saying, who am I now? Like, who are you now?
So before I was very much in my victim mindset. I was somebody who thought the world was divided into right and wrong, good and bad, the people who are givers and the people who are takers. I had a very like a judgmental kind of view of life. I was an extremely judgmental person. You might have been feel fooled by my externally soft demeanor because I didn't say no, I didn't have boundaries, but inside my mind it was all sharp sharp prongs and broken glass. It was just like everything was just so harsh and judgmental, and I judged myself very harshly too, which is why I judged others. And it was very, very I was very full of shame, I was full of resentment, all these things, anger, all these things, unresolved, you could say those kind of emotions that are just trapped in our bodies. I wasn't even myself. I used to call myself like a bunch of reactions. I was just constantly just looking at others and judging them and thinking what was wrong with them, what was bad about them, without realizing that I myself. And I remember it was meditation that got me there. I had this kind of aha moment one day, and I was like, I am actually judging myself with those same harsh words that I'm judging others. And that was a big, 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 big moment.
And so, I mean, what happened then when you had that aha moment, that enlightenment, for lack of a better word?
I resolved to stop judging anybody. And I decided to go for grace instead. Grace and compassion have been the cornerstones of everything that I wanted to build in my life.
And so, with seeing everyone as either, good or bad, was there not a gray area in there for you, or was it all just kind of one or the other? And there's not a little bit of peanut butter in my chocolate, or a little bit of chocolate in my peanut butter, kind of a thing.
When you're the kind of person who's driven yourself to be chronically depressed, you better believe that you're seeing the world largely as black and black. Forget about white,
Yeah.
like just black.
And so then, once you were able to stop judging, and kind of got past that, I mean, what was that next day like when you wake up in the morning and you see your first person, experience your first interaction with another person? What was that like?
It was because I did all this work somatically, getting rid of judgment was just like a big thing shifted out of my body. It was just like this big release from my body. Something that was heavy and weighing my body down just left my body. It just left. And I would always feel this layers and layers leaving my body. And it had been ongoing from 2007, 2008, where I could feel the energy shifting in my body and things going up. And this one was a big one. And I started my love affair with grace at the same time, because it wasn't really like, even though a large part of judgment left me, I still could see areas where I was still judgmental. And I decided every time I was being judgmental, I would invite grace and I would invite compassion and I would invite these. And every time a harsh word is spoken, either by me or by anybody, I will speak the kind words in return. I will reply, not because I love them, not because I care about them, but because this is my contribution in my lifetime. I want this to be my contribution.
And so, is there a specific type of person who, like, let's say you're doing some you're looking to do some sort of sales marketing campaign, and they say, who are you targeting? Is there an answer for that one, or is this anybody, or is there a time frame when you want them to come to you? You said earlier once they've hit rock bottom, but is there a certain type of person who would be kind of best for you, or is it open to anybody, or what would you say for that?
Well, I think someone needs to be really motivated to do their inner work, because it's, the work that we do is deep, and the ability to see what you're doing to yourself and your own life, it takes a certain amount of strength. All the work is conscious and self-led, so that's another factor. So it's probably most suited to somebody who's got the drive to become their own healer, to become a self-healer. This is how I feel driven to serve. And I think we talk a lot about niche and marketing and stuff, but my most important driver is who I feel most called to serve. And that is somebody who really wants to become their own healer. Because for me, even when I went to therapy, even when I went to things, I moved so rapidly in my own healing because I had my own meditation practice. I had my own various things that I was doing. I was constantly reading, constantly learning, that I couldn't really stay with one therapist for more than, say, 4 weeks. And I had outgrown them in 4 weeks. And then I had to find another. So it was very, I'm a different kind of person, because I'm just like, once I've decided, made up my mind, the 2007, I made up my mind. It was just bang, bang, bang. I made up my mind. I'm going to change everything. And I just, everything I had, I threw at my healing. That's what I did. And this is what I do. And when people want to heal and they want to throw everything at it, they will get it when they come to me. This is what they will get. They can get the most powerful resources that they can throw at their healing, and to get to that rapid level. I would say for me, if I saved somebody 20 years of suffering, that would be quite a good outcome, I would say.
And so when someone wants to throw all their energy at their healing, how are they going to do that? And how are they going to work with you? And where can they find more information about that?
Okay, so I have basically two modalities to work with me. One is I have right now a membership and launch, which is just really the very founding members offer right now. It's a Somatic Self-Healers membership, where we work in a group setting. It's mainly self-led. I share somatic exercises. This is very much based on the biomechanics of the body and how the body, if we do certain things, the body releases all this held stress. So we work every month with a few exercises. They will have to do it every day. So this is good for people who want to do a bit of somatic work every day and see that improvement. They have the Facebook group, they have Zoom calls, so they can work with me. Right now is a great time because it's on a pre-launch offer, which is just $119 USD a month, which is a really, really cheap price. 1st of August is when we go live, and from then on it's $149 USD a month, which is still a pretty good price, because you will get more out of doing those exercises in a month than you would get in any other kind of work, because it's just so powerful, very well crafted with the body in mind and understanding of the body and how it works. So the other one, this is really well suited if you have any kind of physical ailments, chronic illness, etc., because those come from large chunks of energy being stored in our body. So large chunks of energy need to leave, for which we need these exercises. The other offer I have is a course called From Stuck to Self-Healing. I have my own healing method. It's called Somatic Imagery Method. It's a fun, playful, storytelling-based way of healing somatically. I created this when I was healing with my son. I didn't want him to have the hard things to do, so I did it the really soft and gentle, playful way. And then we realized that the body likes to talk in stories and those kind of things. So that course, I run it periodically. It's I used to run it as a 5-week course. Probably going to run it more like an 8-week course going forward. They can come in and see some of my free resources before I launch the next one. I'm going to have this course running in October, where they can learn again somatic imagery method. So they learn it, they practice it in the group setting, and then they have that tool for life. So it's very much driven by giving people tools so they can heal themselves. And I obviously offer them a space with grace, compassion, and connection where they can actually learn properly and heal well.
Excellent. Okay. Well, yeah. Hey, Prabha, thank you so much for being on here, and I am glad we got to talk, not knowing where we're going to go, what we get to, but I'm glad we got to where we got to, and hopefully everyone's gonna, gain some knowledge from this. So,
Thank you, Rusty, for inviting me. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you did listen, thank you.
Yeah, if they're here, they're listening. So, yeah. Well, so yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk again. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Rusty. Thank you.
You bet. Bye. All right. That's Prabha Nagarajan. So, yeah, you guys get a hold of her and learn. You guys, you can get feeling better. Why not feel better? I tell people this all the time. Why not feel better? It's all right. It's all right to feel better. You don't have to feel shitty. You don't have to. You can if you want to. If that's your gimmick. You want to feel shitty all the time, go for it. Who's stopping you? I might not encourage you to do it, but who's stopping you from doing it? So if you want to do it, go for it. But when you don't want to, then feel better. It's cool. Ain't nothing wrong with that. So you guys, thank you so much for listening here. And man, where is that? Let's see if I can do this. I guess not. So, hey guys, thanks so much for listening here. Check out the other shows on the network, such as When the Gloves Come Off, the Thinking Man's Pro Wrestling Podcast, This Is with Lizzie, Saved by the Ben, and the show is brought to you by Fred Ben Savage as Fuck, Stoner East Productions, Hardcore Entertainment, Hypnosis Straight, and Sock'emUp.org. You guys, and that is the show. Man, you better subscribe, like, and share it. Boom.
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.
Ernest! Ernest!
Yes, Pee-wee.
You brought the snacks, right?